Hello, Marc Steinberg. Welcome to Crisis and Wonder.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for your presence.
Thank you. You once told me that a crisis is a treasure box for those brave enough to open it. If we are brave enough, what can we find in a crisis?
Hmm. The treasure box is not just for grabs immediately. So it's only available for those who have had the courage to go into the underworld, into their shadows, face the challenge, not fall into victim, not go into resistance, but go through it. And once we do that, once we have done that, then we are facing the existential fear that is linked to the god of Hades, the god of the underworld. And when we are coming then to the throne, having the eyes of Hades holding the gaze, facing the human nature in its pure rawness, not going away. Then we get the access to the treasure box. And what we find in the treasure box is self-worth. Now people say, well, self-worth, what is that? Well, it's a lot. If you have unlimited self-worth, unlimited self-love, self-esteem, appreciation, not conditional in any way, that means everything that you are, who you are, what you have, as is completely embraced and linked to an eternal, infinite value. And that translates as within, so without, directly into your external reality that recalibrates itself to match your resonance of self-worth. That means abundance, because self-worth in this treasure box is infinite. Abundance will come your way no matter what you do, no matter whether you are in action or not, whether you sleep or whether you are working, it doesn't matter. Abundance will happen because the law of synchronization between the inner and the outer takes care of it. So what you get is an effortless state of flow that is accompanied by abundance. I think that is a very, very great treasure.
It sounds very enticing. And I think for my part, I get you and I got glimpses of that. I also observe people struggling. And let's just go to the first step. If something happens in the outside world, sickness or a business fails and project fails, kids get sick, a family member dies, not just looking at the struggles, but it sometimes feels as a punishment. In the experience of people, it's like a punishment. Sort of, we come into this life and we expect, and I know you want to talk about expectations, but in a way, we expect that if we behave well and if we do well, then everything is going to work out. And then the within and without, and then something happens and we're surprised and we feel punished. So what can you give us on our way through the punishment?
It's a very good question. Thank you for that. The tragedies, the losses, the hardships in life. Since the very beginning, humans had self-reflection and were asking questions about life. This came up in religious contexts. Why is God punishing me? What have I done? And so on and so forth. In philosophical contexts, in mythological contexts, we know of stories like Prometheus, who was punished for having brought the fire to humankind, and. So the whole history in all areas of humankind is full of that principle. Now, if you see it not as a punishment, but as a correction, in the bigger picture of the journey of the soul, where we go from a soul which is always complete, always perfect. However, the journey of a soul's purpose is to become conscious of itself. And for that, we need to go into separation from the soul, because the eyes, if they don't have a mirror, can't see themselves. That mirror is our external world. That's why we have incarnated as a human being, to have the opportunity to have a mirror, to go into separation. We here, the world there. To believe it, otherwise it wouldn't work, right? A movie only works when you are in the movie. As long as you're sitting in the cinema and just saying, well, it's just a projector is projecting light, and then you're not in the story. So there's a reason why we forget who we are and where we came from, why we are experiencing hardships. Now, those hardships are, as I said, correction measures from the bigger picture of the soul's journey. When the soul is recognizing that its satellite, us in a human form, is not in alignment with the soul's incarnation purpose in order to become in this incarnation a little bit more conscious of itself. So the soul at birth has signed up to go this way. The human being, not being aware of anything, is going that way. They think they do everything right. And let's say they do. They are kind, they are considerate, they are diligent, and so on and so forth. But if those two paths diverge, then at some stage, the soul says, wait a minute, we only got 70, 80, 90 years left, available. And now we need to get to fulfill on our incarnation purpose. So let us stop ourselves, satellite human being, you, by quitting the job or getting fired, or the company goes bankrupt. Some change, because that direction just isn't. Like when God closes doors, then there's one open that is supposed to be the one you should go through for your own sake, for your own soul's redemption. So if that is a perspective that one can take on, then everything changes, because you know that person that dumped you, that relationship that broke, that beloved person who died, that illness that is tormenting you, physical, emotional, mental, depression, for example, anxiety, panic attacks nowadays. These are very difficult states of experience because it's very painful. And there's hopelessness, which is making it even more painful. That despair and the despondency that people experience is often harder, more painful than anything physical. Either way, consider it as a correction measurement. So we are basically living on a big correction planet, a correction facility, planet Earth. But the good news is that if you take it easy in those experiences, and of course, I know it's not easy to take it easy when you are in the pain of having lost something that was dear to your heart, when a body organ is not functioning anymore, probably, and you are facing existential fears, how long maybe you're going to die, or you need to live with one kidney or something like that. I know it's extreme, but what are we talking about? We are talking about the fate of being a human being. So things will not go the way we have planned. John Lennon was right. Life is happening while we are busy making other plans. So the enlightened way to look at it is to trust life, that this measure although it's very painful, is for the better good in the context of the soul's journey. And when we see it that way, we will experience a decrease of our resistance. The Buddhists say pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Now, the suffering is our relationship to the pain, our relationship to the loss, our relationship to the fear, whatever we experience as painful. That relationship is the story we create, how we interpret, how we frame, how we tell ourselves, oh my God, what have I done now wrong? I'm always disadvantaged. I must have a bad karma. The original sin must be really bad in my case, and so on and so forth. That's causing the suffering, not the sensation of the pain, not the fact that you are back in being a single, alone, not the fact that you're broke, not the fact that you may even have the authorities looking after you for whatever reason. So whatever you have done bad, what you're in conflict with, the fights with the matrix, all of that is for the purpose of you having experiences that the soul needs, your soul, in order to become more conscious of itself. Evolutionary process.
Thank you for introducing the soul already. I wanted to come to that at a later point. But I would like to go back to what you mentioned about the difference between pain and suffering. So what we are aware of, we can deal with. And what we are unaware of or unconscious of deals with us. So I would like to go to the notion of pain and suffering that you started to explaining, but let's bring in grief. So within the notion of grief, how can we become more aware and differentiate how we move between those experiences?
I'm not quite sure if I'm fully getting your question. You talk about grief and how do we move between the experiences, plural, what do you mean?
So if something dear to us is being taken away, let's say,
Yes.
let's not go into a child, let's say like a family member, old age, very fair, I'll say let's call it fair, but still there's pain, perhaps not so much suffering, perhaps yes, but there is also grief. So how, and it doesn't.
Do you mean grief?
Grief in I'm grieving because somebody is
of
gone,
course.
like grandparents, parents,
yes,
for instance. And then sometimes the pain and grief get mixed. And sometimes we're grieving something that isn't even a person. So I'm trying to learn from you how we can move through these experiences when we experience being in pain or grieving something that is not there anymore or is not there. So that perhaps becoming aware of what you're sharing can help with this experience.
Sure, thank you. So when we lose something that is dear to our heart, then the natural response from our emotional body is grief, it's mourning. So we're in the experience of this being a part of us, my child, my pet, my dog, my cat, my parents, my friend, my ability to be agile, my ability to be expressive, and so on and so forth. Something that we have identified with and have held in our hearts is suddenly not there anymore. The emotional body is needing to readjust now. That is a period, usually, depending on the intensity of the loss, between 3 days and 3 weeks. We do know that from cultures who have been highly developed, that there is the natural time for a human being to adjust to the new reality, which is without that what was dear to you and belonged to you. This adjustment is natural. There's nothing wrong with it. So when we experience the pain of mourning, there's one thing that helps enormously is when we are using our breath, breathing through it. Because when the pain is getting a grip on us, we are starting to contract. Holding our breath means holding the flow of our life energy. And that is not the right measure. If you can breathe through it, right, and keep breathing, it helps the emotional body to heal, to close the void of that what was there before. Because now suddenly, literally in the emotional body, there's a hole. There's a big nothingness, and that puts you back into the experience of emptiness and despair and loss of meaning and all these kind of things. So that needs to heal like an open wound in the body. It's the same process. You have a cut, and then it heals. The healing happens naturally. We do not need to heal. We need to support the natural healing process. So when one is in that pain, in that experience, then resistance is not helping. Any form of contraction is not helping. We don't need to contract. It's an unconscious reflex. The moment we are conscious, maybe if you hear that interview, dear listener, and you remember when you are in the condition of mourning, experiencing grief, you just remember that you do not need to contract. You do not need to resist. You do not need to be a hero or a heroine. No, you just let it happen. Support your natural healing process. And this will help the healing to accelerate, to also be more complete when it is finished. Because often, the moment we feel a little bit better, we immediately jump back into operations. This is sometimes premature. What then happens is the wound couldn't close completely, and therefore the next experience, which is maybe similar to a loss, is then also directing the energy to the not yet healed old wound, and then it becomes a bigger thing than it actually is. So one may now think, how can I check my old wounds if they are really completely healed and sealed, so that I do not need to experience old pain when a new pain is coming my way? And this can be done by going deep into one's early years, childhood, re-examining the relationship with the parents or the caretakers or the important people in one's early years. Could be friends, could be teenagers, could be siblings, etc., etc. Stuff happened which usually wasn't healed. And that's what I, for example, work with in my shadow and light retreats. The shadow work invites people to go on stage. We have psychodrama theater components where they can go back into their original situation where something happened and then a trauma got embedded. Why? Because we weren't able to complete the experience. So when you were mistreated as a child, when you were a judge and experienced injustice or any form of breaking the illusion of the paradise in the child's mind, we couldn't express our anger because we were afraid that we are offending our parents and then maybe they are rejecting us. And as a child, the last thing what you want is any form of rejection. So you suppressed it, or you didn't let it go out, or you put it into something else. It's not healed. So we need to go back in that situation as conscious beings as we are today. If a participant does that, then what's happening is that they re-experience the original pain of mom having abandoned you unintentionally. Maybe she just didn't listen because she had something else on her mind. But you took it as, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy of her attention. And that it becomes a concept for the rest of your life. You know, I had participants in the training, in the retreats, who shared their full story, how the unhealed wound from that trauma has defined who they were for the rest of their lives. Like some woman shared how she, as a child, was forgotten, and therefore she concluded 5 years old that she is not so good, not good enough, like her siblings who were not forgotten. And then her whole life was about proving that she is good enough. She was excellent at her job. She made a lot of money. She looked brilliant, and all of that. But inside, she couldn't find peace. She was driven. Inside, she couldn't find joy, real deep joy, because she still came from, I'm not good enough, but I prove to everybody I'm good enough. The others may go a different direction and prove that it's right that they are not good enough. They have a destiny no matter what they do. They always manage to make it a failure. They start a business, they have all the talents, but they make decisions that break the business. They start a relationship, they have all the possibilities of that relationship, but they start behaving in ways or choosing a partner that later on turns out the relationship is breaking up again. So, which proves the original wound, right, that they are not good enough. So if one can see a pattern, like a red thread of things happening from a principal point of view, time and time again, you change the partners, but you don't change the pattern. Right? You change the business, but you don't change the pattern. You change your financial strategies, but you don't change the pattern. You're still broke, or you're still struggling, and so on and so forth. When you see that, you need to go back to where it all started, because otherwise you will continue and continue and continue trying different external changes that do not have the effect to make the internal change. Once you do the internal change, the healing, then the spook is gone. It vaporizes. Suddenly, you do not have financial problems anymore. Suddenly, your relationship works. Suddenly, your sexuality is fulfilling. Suddenly, your body has energy, resilience, and your immune system works beautifully, and so on and so forth.
Thank you for sharing, and thank you also for bringing up that a trauma can also be something that is, let's call it a minor impact, but it can have a massive impact, because very often when we hear trauma, we think of experiences with war or domestic violence or something massive. But a trauma can also live in us, in our cells, in our memory, on a different level. So thank you for bringing our awareness to this. About the realizing patterns. So let's say there's somebody listening and he or she recognizes certain patterns coming up. How can he or she go into the source, like finding the source? How does that work?
I believe it's very difficult to do that by yourself, because you are already in the impact of the unresolved trauma. You know something is there. So you need to have an environment where you get the support of mirroring, and maybe even accompanied by exercises and a structure. Again, I refer to my 8-day process of the Shadow and Light retreat, where for more than 1.5 decades now, I have developed a process that helps people to do exactly that. Yeah? You may think you don't have much going on. You see a pattern, your relationships not really working, always coming to the same point, always to the same arguments, always to the same conclusions, but you still smoke opium, right? That one day you will find the right one where all of that is not happening. Illusion alert. So when we have the support, the mirroring, the process, we will be led to the original situation that caused us to step into an interpretation of that event, a context for the sake of our survival. And when we see that I'm bad, I'm not lovable, I'm unworthy, I'm not good enough, these are the contexts that the mind of the child has created, and it became then a pain, and our acts that we developed in teenage years and especially refined as adults became strategies to override that pain. So when all of that is clear and one is in the commitment of healing that, then I suggest you go there where the healing can happen, where there is a reference, where there is a structure, where there is a community or a process or a retreat that is designed and has proven to help people going back into the situation, and then in the conscious experience of the original situation and the pain and the emotions you experienced back then, now as being conscious in that situation today, you then can take action on stage that you weren't able to take action back then. So back then, you couldn't stand up for yourself. You couldn't stand up against the uncle who touched you. You couldn't stand up against the teacher who bullied you. You couldn't stand up against your sibling who betrayed you. You couldn't stand up against your dad who dominated you, and so on and so forth. Now you can. Back into the situation, boom, you're there. Now you stand up for yourself. That means now you can actually express what you weren't able back then. And if you do that, and you will, if you go to my training, my retreat, for example, I will be with you right there. And then I will ask you and support you and encourage you, empower you to express everything that you didn't express back then. What then happens is it will be loud, it will be cathartic, it will be dramatic, conscious, but you get it all out. So that means you discharge your 70 trillion cells, because it's cellular memory, not only in your head in the long-term memory, it's cellular memory. You discharge everything by being there, present, out, out, out. Yeah? We work with mattresses, with cushions, etc. It's going to be really, really energetic. But what happens is when you go to the very, very end, that means nothing left, like you're purging the toxic, traumatic energy out of yourself. And then you check if there's anything left. And I have a radar on that, a sense on that. If I sense it, I invite you to take another look. Do you really feel it's all gone? No, it's not. Then we go another round until you are so empty that you now know it's all out. And after that intense work, you suddenly have lost 15, 20 years in your face. You suddenly look like a baby newly reborn. You went through the most dramatic 15 minutes of your life, and suddenly you look like a baby. You love life again because you're not in pain anymore. The whole world looks new. And we all see it, right? And we confirm it. We give you a love shower. We celebrate it. That is shadow work.
Yes, I am proof. I already mentioned it on the podcast that I was once a participant and then in February an assistant, and I am absolutely convinced of the power of that work. And I can just say how transformative and life-changing and impactful, and like there should be a description for everybody to at least once go on one of these shadow work retreats or your shadow and light retreat to get it all out. And I think there's so much stuff in us that we are unaware of, that we carry around with us, and to realize how much that is and how heavy that weight is. Yeah, I mean, I guess everybody gets the picture. And I also liked that I like that you stressed how energetic this shadow work or healing can be, because very often, especially in the spiritual world, there are, for instance, these meditations where you forgive by cutting a cord and then you're free, or you're standing underneath a waterfall and then it's all washed out and then you're free, you're liberated, and whatever was there, the trauma is gone. And I sometimes have the impression that this is what people expect. Okay, this is the work, I just imagine it. And sometimes that works, yes. But sometimes, as you mentioned, there needs to be other steps. It needs to have a different process. And we need to work with like more energy and a different energy and get it down to the cells. So yeah, is there anything that you want to add on this particular topic of like what the spiritual world, things of healing and forgiveness and what comes across?
Yeah, I would love to. What you said is a great experience, but it happens in consciousness. So when we go into meditation, connect to our light, connect to the divine energies, we do experience liberation in consciousness. Problem is that the human vessel that we live in is not discharged. We are enlightened in consciousness, but not in our body. Our body still carries the unresolved traumatic energy. It's still there, time and again. And then people wonder why in the next relationship, after the beautiful ayahuasca liberation experience, in the next relationship a year later, they are starting to react the same way as 10 years ago. It happens all the time. So I salute the humility of every spiritual seeker to acknowledge, yes, those direct connections to the divine through Kriya Yoga, through Kundalini Yoga, through meditations, they are wonderful. They enlighten you in consciousness. But do they enlighten your body? Answer that to yourself. If it was, your relationships, your freedom would never disappear. But they do. Life is proving. People meditate on abundance. They feel like $1 billion worth or a mountain of gold or whatever the image might be. And then a year later, they still struggle to pay the rent. Or they even get more broke. Come on. There's a saying in the Bible, and I'm not connected to any religion, but I appreciate all of them. By the fruits you shall recognize them. An den Früchten sollt ihr sie erkennen. That means by the fruits, by your life, by your very life, not what you think about yourself and all the rest of it. No, by the reality you live in, the people who are connected to you, the ex-partners, how they talk about you, and so on and so forth. By the fruits, they shall recognize them. And this is the proof of your reality, because external, internal are always connected. As within, so without, but it also means as without, so within. Same thing, right? The dualistic view of the world is me here, out there, big difference. No. Yeah, it's 100%. Yeah, who you are in the external world, what you have, how you move your body, the people you're connected with, your business, all of that is just showing who you are. Any interpretation fails to explain or change your external reality. So, this is important for every spiritual seeker to have the courage and the authenticity to challenge yourself by looking at your life, your connection to your parents, if they're still alive, the connection to your children, the connection to the status of your finances. And I'm not saying you have to be a billionaire in order to be confirmed in your enlightenment. No, no, no. I'm saying abundance. That means you are who you are. You are, as you are, having a particular standard of lifestyle. And abundance means you have no effort in having the measures, the resources to live that lifestyle. If not, something is not enlightened in you. Right? So that is a tough cookie for many, because many spiritual seekers, I have to say that, are in spirituality because they try to find a way different than actually needing to deal with their stuff. Right? They think they can bypass the challenge of being a human being. No, no, you're not here for bypassing. You're here for facing, going through, coming out on the other side, having mastered the challenge that you are given. The good news is that you've never been given a challenge you're not having the power to meet. Life is fair. Life loves you. Life gives you only hardships and challenges, because when it knows that you are ready to master that. So have trust in life and take it on.
Since you mentioned the soul a couple of times, what is the soul? How can we experience it? Like somebody who has heard of it, but is not as advanced within the spiritual world and would still like to understand how to get in connection with it or how to experience it. Please share with that. What is the soul?
Well, thank you. Number one, the soul is not something that is external. The soul is the space, and it's difficult to use words for it without going too much into metaphysics and spiritual jargon, but I have to use some words. So the soul is a dimension, and you are in that dimension a satellite having crystallized as a human being. The soul is your essence. When you leave your body, you're back in that space, in that dimension. Before you entered that body, before your parents were conceiving you, before your parents even were thinking of you, you were soul. And as soul, you were in the service of forwarding your evolution. Remember, the soul's evolutionary process is to become conscious of itself. Meaning that from the soul perspective, you were designing your next incarnation, choosing your parents from the soul space, choosing with the parents also your destiny, your unfoldment, poverty, middle class, wealth, whatever has been the setup. All of that has been already chosen by you as soul, not by you as human being. So then the process started of conception. You got your spacesuit, your body, you're now human being, in the service of having contracted, crystallized into this matrix, being a human being. You are a spiritual being. You are a soul with a human experience. You're not a human with a spiritual experience. It's the other way around. You are a spiritual being, a soul, with a human experience. Now, that's the way I would love to have people see soul, so that's where they're coming from, not something external they can choose to connect to. No, it's always you being already as an expression of soul 24/7.
For somebody who doesn't have the most loving relationship with life, who is struggling and at war, let's say at war with life, what can you say to open the perspective of that person up and to help that person to encounter a more loving relationship, to see the support of life? You said like life happens for you. It's not unfair. I'm sure that a lot of people have experiences that lead them to the conclusion that life is very unfair and hurting, and of course we cannot go against life, and because this is what is, and we cannot go against ourselves as in being in that life. So what could help, or what helps from your experience, from your teachings, to fall in love with life again, to open up, to experience life with this eyes of wonder, like eyes from children, to get back to a playfulness, perhaps even in suffering or in going through crisis, a inner state of, that's interesting. Okay, let's have a look at this. Let's go into it. And not a completely falling apart, as a lot of us experience this on a regular basis.
What you're referring to is self-love. To learn to love ourselves the way we are, and that means also our relationship to life. I have moments where I want to nuke the whole world, right? And I love myself in that, because I embrace this is also part of me. In the shadow work, we work with the dark wolf and the light wolf. These two aspects, yin and yang, masculine, feminine, and so on and so forth. The dark part of the yin-yang symbol is very real, and it's not supposed to be made gray. It's supposed to be left black, but it must be in perfect harmony and balance with the light side. Most people have no problem to go and to try to serve the light side. They have a problem with the black one. And either they do not really attend to it because they are afraid of it, or they are having a wrong, bad, negative judgment about it. So if the dark wolf would receive as much appreciation and love and understanding as the light side, people would have much more love for themselves, because who you are is a composition of dark and light. Inhale and exhale. If you judge the exhale is bad, well, try living for another 2 minutes. I'm not going to exhale anymore because it's bad. Okay, so what are you going to do now? It's such a simple but powerful demonstration of how polarity works. To make peace with the darkness, with the particular external realities that represent darkness. Oh my God, that is most liberating. And if there's anything about unconditional love, it means no conditions. That means that Trump is loved by God as much as Jesus and Buddha and so on and so forth. Right? Our judgmental nature of the ego, dividing the world into good and bad, that's a problem. So when you stop or decrease the amount of dividing yourself into the good you and the bad you, because there isn't, that means you increase your self-love. Because now you can love yourself in your darkness, in your aggressive thoughts, in your resistance to life, in your judgments about what should and what should not be. Loving yourself doesn't mean that you fall unconsciously into being that. It simply means you're holding the space for the dark wolf to be grumpy and to be aggressive and to growl and to, just holding the space. Yeah? It will not be forever because remember, yin and yang is a balance. So there is an exhale, dark wolf, gut. The exhale, and then guess what? Exactly. The light wolf, the inhale comes, but then when that polarity is saturated, it moves over, inhale, exhale, inhale, and so on and so forth. That's a dance of life. And if you can grow more and more and more into a space where you can hold yourself as an expression of the inhale and the exhale, the dark and the light, without falling unconscious into it. I'm not saying become dark and just do bad things. I'm not saying that. You need to allow yourself internally to do the bad things, to have the awareness of doing of what your darkness wants and how it is unconscious, aggressive, jealous, unforgiving, and so on. You know, the whole list of the dark side, the whole list. Have it and say, hey, dear dark wolf, I get you, I fully get you. Yeah? And I love you as much as I love my light wolf, who can forgive, who sees everything in the light, and both inhale, exhale.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Of course, we would also like to know a little bit about the crisis that perhaps took a great toll from you, that almost tipped you over. Would you like to share something from your personal experience that made you judgmental and made you curse life, perhaps go into war a bit, and that made you come out more into the light afterwards?
Well, I had many crises, but definitely the most two important ones are the typical two spiritual crises every human being goes through. One is when you move from teenage years into adult, and the other one is when the adult moves into the last part of life, the second half of life. So we, in normal terms, would be called midlife crisis. So both spiritual crises were a big, big challenge that in both cases brought me very close to death. I didn't want to live anymore. It was just not making sense to go through all that pain if I'm gonna die anyway, like everybody else. So why should I suffer through all of that shit that I'm seeing coming anyway if I'm gonna die at the end? I could die as well now and save me that painful journey, right? So these were my rebellious teenage thoughts when I had my depression, age 16, which then brought me to my spiritual commitment, my journey that went on for more than 12 years until age 30 when I started to teach. So it had a very good purpose also. The relationship to life never really changed. It is a relationship of becoming more and more and more able to appreciate the wisdom of the process called life. I started out seeking happiness, and in the process of seeking happiness, the whole thing of happiness started to crumble, my concept of happiness. And it got cracks, it crumbled, and suddenly it wasn't about happiness anymore. It was about presence. And I found that happiness is something I never really get, or when I got it and I thought I had it, it changed. I lost it again, like everybody else's experience. So what became more important was presence. And then in my dark night of the soul, which almost took 5 years, an incredible long time, when you experience states of despondency and depression, everybody who had a glimpse of that knows a second feels like eternity. And it's brutal. Back then, if you had given me the choice to choose between my mental state, what I experienced, and cancer, terminal illness, I probably would have chosen terminal illness because it's less painful. And, today I can laugh about it, but back then I was on my knees, crying almost every day, out of emotional exhaustion. I just couldn't take it anymore. And but I was always conscious of the process. I never lost the last bit of the I am. There was always something in me that was looking at what was happening. It didn't help. It didn't ease the pain and the challenges, but it kept me from unconscious acts of desperation. So I didn't harm my relationships. I didn't harm my business. I didn't harm myself. Although I studied, which suicidal methods are less to be failed than others and so on and so forth. This is what one does when one is in complete hopelessness and despair. We all know, or those who do the research, that people in depression are about 20-25% prone to think and try to commit suicide. And so my I am allowed me, okay, dark wolf, so to do the research, but never to actually go into action about it. Yeah. So if anybody is in the pain of, questioning the meaning of your life, questioning the whole process of life, asking yourself, is this it? Is this really, is that all there is? Why? And so on and so forth. I hope your I am is switched on. I hope you are willing to learn from the process, seeking meaning in the meaninglessness, trying to find a piece of light in the emptiness, in the void. And it's very good if you get help. Very, very good. I had people who helped me through the most difficult parts of that journey. Help means people who can hold the space for you. Therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, coaches, gurus, whoever is able to give you the feeling that you're not alone, that they can get you, they can hold you. So get support if that is you. And yeah, just know that it's a correction of your journey for the better good of your soul's incarnation purpose. It always goes back to that.
Thank you, Marc, for sharing. Thank you. One last question that I always ask is, what does inner strength mean to you?
It means to me the ability to be aware and present when you are triggered. Interacting with life every day contains many, many triggers. People will not always do what you think they should do. And if your concept is not confirmed, chances that you get triggered are quite high. Expectations do not get fulfilled. And so the whole should and should not, when it's challenged, and that happens minimum 10, 20, 30 times a day for every human being, then you get triggered. And then when you are not aware, that trigger becomes you. You will react in ways that are reactive. That means for the survival of your pride and your righteousness, your standards, and whatever you think you need to defend when people are not confirming it, all of that. No, a person of awareness, inner strength, is seeing all of that happening, and because you are aware, there's a gap between your awareness and the reaction. In this gap, you can make a choice how you now respond to the person who just triggered you. And that's inner strength, the ability to choose, not by suppression, but by awareness.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Marc. I appreciate you so much for taking the time not only to come on the podcast, but also to serve your light and your life for the well-being of all the people that you're in touch with and who can find out about your work. And I appreciate you for your life. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to express myself. Thank you for doing what you are doing, bringing awareness to the people in the world, and may many be inspired and maybe even moved to take some action. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.